Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to Ron Seggi Today, all across the USA and around the world. Well, we've got an author with us, and when I read his book, I thought, wow, this is a story to be told on the air and maybe one day on the big screen. And even though it's a small town in Erie, Pennsylvania, it's next to some big cities, Cleveland, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, where you think of crime back in the days with the mafia, whether it be the Italian, the Irish, whatever the case may be. He touches them all in a book called A One-Man Crime Spree. Joining us right now is Tim Murphy. Hi, Tim. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Hey, Ron. Great to talk to you again. And you really bring up a good point about Erie, Pennsylvania. Even though it's a little town, it's strategically placed between Buffalo, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh, which going back to my grandmother's day during Prohibition, it was declared a neutral town. So when anybody got too hot in those cities, they would come and lay low in Erie, Pennsylvania, because Erie was a lay-low little town, and we had a great beach.
You mentioned your grandmother. It's just a fascinating description how a young man graduating from high school in 1975 all of a sudden becomes part of a huge group of guys that are not good people. In fact, you talk about being part of the Secret Seven, and you didn't even know who the other six were. But your grandmother, really, a very nice lady, very well dressed, drove around in a gold Cadillac. She got you kind of oriented in how to make a living, in her case, maybe running numbers. She had a very sophisticated operation. But how did you get involved? Because you have a big background in technology. You know what you're doing when it comes to the technical world and do that now as a living. How did it all start for you?
It really started, when I was 6 years old. My grandmother definitely treated me different than all the other grandkids, probably because I was more like my father than anybody else. But really where it all started was at her funeral. My grandmother and grandfather ran the city during Prohibition because Grandpa Murphy had a tugboat that he modified. He put an extra gear set in so he could kick low-end power to high-end speed at night, and he could go from Presque Isle to Long Point, Canada, and back with a full load of top-shelf Canadian whiskey. This was not rot gut or bootleg. This was real Canadian top shelf, and Grandma Murphy was the brains of the operation. Ron, she ran a card game for 20 years after Prohibition ended, right across the street from the police station, and ran a card game there until 1954, until the last mayor got kicked out of office for taking bribes from Grandma Murphy. Grandma Murphy supplied all liquor. My grandmother would drive her gold Cadillac convertible anywhere in town because if she got pulled over, one cop would give her a ride home, the other cop would drive her car home. She died in 1979, and every Irish hoodlum, Italian mafioso, Irish cop, city councilman, and everyone else in that city who was anybody was at her funeral. I was 18 years old standing at her casket and heard a voice behind me say, "Oh, I love the old gal." And I turned around, and there was a man there, Ron, that I'd known probably since I was 10 or 11 years old, a friend of the family, Jimmy J.R. Russell, who became very notorious, but he was even more notorious in the Buffalo area. He was one of the best safe crackers, Ron, throughout the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. A genius, master thief, mastermind. And he looked at me. He knew I was doing stupid 18-year-old kid stuff in a small town, going to get popped. He said, "Kid, I don't recommend this for a lifetime." He goes, "You're a virgin. You belong to me." So he goes, "Monday morning, I need a driver. You come over to my house and drive my Cadillac for me." And Ron, I ended up driving him from coast to coast for almost 7 years. He used to say, "Wake me up in Buffalo, wake me up in Cleveland, wake me up in Detroit, wake me up in Pittsburgh." And I would.
When you were doing that, I mean, driving is one thing. Being jailed for something is another. Where did you go from just driving this car for this criminals to doing stuff that put you in prison 3 separate occasions.
Well, these were long rides, Ron, and he did a lot of schooling with me. Originally, I started out as just a kid that kept his mouth shut in the corner, and for years and years, I was only known as the kid. He would never reveal my identity to anyone in other cities for protection for me, but also for protection for him, because I was a little bit smarter than the average bear, and I started learning alarm systems. I started learning scanners and radio frequencies. Then he started teaching me locks, started teaching me safes. And he's the one that gave me the nickname Murph the Surf. I'm not the original Murph the Surf. The original Murph the Surf was Jack Murph the Surf Murphy. Stole the Star of India Sapphire in 1964. One night, JR and I were doing a score, and it didn't go as we had planned. We were actually stealing a tool for the real score the next night to drill a safe. And he said, "You are the new Murph the Surf." He goes, "I was in Rikers Island with the original Murph the Surf." He goes, "You're the new Murph the Surf." And from that night, the handle stuck.
You bring back a lot of memories. You went in front of a judge one time that said, "You better bring your toothbrush because you're going to spend a long time in jail." Was it difficult to write it knowing that you're going to bring back some memories and maybe some stories that the rest of your family and friends didn't know about you?
Yeah, it really was, Ron. I actually started this book many years ago. I actually started it in prison the last time, and then my lawyer told me, "You have to turn this into fiction," he said, "because the statute of limitations aren't up yet." And then I started rewriting it 2016. My only natural son OD'd. Fentanyl in the cocaine, and I actually stopped writing at that point. 2023, my wife Laura passed away, and so many people came to me and said, "You got to finish this book," because my wife did not want me to do the book. She never wanted me to tell the stories because she knew my friends. She knew all the people, and she knew it was the truth. But out of respect for our children at the time, I never told the stories. And I actually started going to college for the first time when I was in prison and did 32 credits in prison and got a perfect 4.0 average, and I said, wow, if I have the time, I could really do this. So when I got out, I got a degree in robotics and automation, and I became a controls engineer at many major corporations.
Ever sit back and wonder that if you would have put the effort that you put into being illegal and you put it into what you later put it into in life, probably done a lot better and enjoyed life a little bit better? Because you mentioned your son, the love of your life, which is Mary Ellen DeSanto. She also overdosed. Do you think that both of those cases might have been the result of your background?
I'm sure each of them had something to do with it. My regret with my son John is I let him know about Murph the Surf at too early of an age. Mary Ellen, JR had given me some rules about doing time, and one of the rules was if you're going to do a long time, you have to cut yourself off from loved ones on the outside world because it'll make you do hard time.
You were given the opportunity to actually go into a witness protection program. You, like many other people that are offered that, the first thing came to your mind is, okay, that's all good. I'm safe, but what are the people that are after me? And they were. How are they going to treat my family, the ones I left behind? And that was a dilemma for you.
Yes, it was. JR, the last thing he went to prison for was masterminding a $3.2 million armored car robbery, 1982, Royal Oak, Michigan, outside of Detroit. And it took them a couple years before they caught up with anybody. And they got away with the money, whoever they were. I didn't know those days, Ron. I shut my mouth and did my time. But the Federal Organized Crime Task Force did slide a piece of paper across to me and said, "Mr. Murphy, you don't have to do another minute of time. We can walk out of here right now." And I instantaneously said, "What are you going to do for my mother, my father, my brothers, my sisters that have to live, breathe, and walk on these streets?" I said, "These people will off them one at a time to get to me," and turned around and demanded to go back to my jail cell and did not want to be questioned anymore.
That's a heavy thing for a young man, and you were young at the time. Were you ever just downright scared of these people? Was there a time where you just want to run away from, or was it too late?
Ron, you're always scared. Whoever says they ain't hasn't been there. Things happen happen in front of your eyes, Ron, and there's no saying no anymore. You're either in or you're out, and if you're out, you're really out. And believe me, there was a professional hitman in Erie that came in to kill me because people worried that the smart Irish kid knew too much.
The book is One Man Crime Spree. If you like thrillers, if you like stories about the mob, The Godfather was ahead, they're big. This is a true story. It's available anywhere you can get books right now. And Tim and I will be right back with more with Ron Seggi Today. We're back, everyone. Guest has been nice enough to stay with us another segment. His book called One Man Crime Spree. Tim Murphy is our guest. Tim, I assume that you were making good money at this, but when you're in jail, you're not doing a job. It's not a daily paycheck, and you had a family to support. Or did you make enough when you were doing the stuff that you didn't have to worry if you spent 3 years in jail?
Well, actually, Ron, I did not have a family when I was in there. I met my wife while I was in there. She was coming and visiting me, and she was visiting me for months before she told me she had a little boy, let alone a special little boy. I said, oh, the special. She goes, well, he's very special. He's in a wheelchair. He's got cerebral palsy. I said, really? I said, well, where is he? She goes, oh, don't worry. He's at home watching TV. And it made it sound like she plunked him in front of the TV and came and visited me in the joint. I go, you get your butt home and you take care of him. She goes, don't worry. He's being taken very good care of by my niece. And I said, well, I want to meet him. And she said, well, how are we going to do that in here? So I said, 2 weeks from now, the European American Committee in the joint, which was the Italian Dago boys I was tied up with, and I use that term very affectionately because I have always fallen in love with the Italian girls. My wife was Sicilian.
I'm Sicilian, too.
The Irish and Italians, that love-hate affair, you know what I mean? They had control of the prison yard to throw an Italian-American Day picnic in the joint, and the guards were only going to let Italians, Sicilians, and one smart Irish kid that made them so much money they couldn't afford to kill me because they wanted to, Ron, but they couldn't kill the golden goose. So she ended up bringing Justin into the prison, little 4 years old, and I looked at him. I said, well, how are you guys making it? And she goes, well, we're really not. His father sort of deserted us, and I'm just a waitress at a little diner. I started sending them money from my commissary fund to pay her rent. You know, it took me years to finally realize this. JR used me to be his eyes, ears, and legs to do his bidding. He had done 27 of his 57 years in prison. I was asking for it. You don't fall into this life. People don't come recruiting you. You have to go looking for it. And I did, and I found him. I chose my life, and I blame nobody but myself for my decisions, Ron.
Redemption is a big thing, and that's the other part of the story. You go from this hellhole, you were in solitary confinement for a while, and all of these people that you rubbed shoulders with, in some cases, were murderers. I mean, the guy that blew off Danny Green was from your hometown. Yep. You know, they made a movie about that. Here's the fascinating part, ladies and gentlemen. From doing a lot of bad things to turning around and now reinventing yourself as a control systems engineer, spending 35 years in the corporate world. And in the back of the book, it shows some of the acknowledgments and accomplishments that you have past 35 years. Stealing jewelry doesn't take a college education.
Well, it does if you're good. But I was blessed, Ron. There is no doubt. The only reason I live, breathe, and walk on this earth is because Jesus Christ is real. He did present himself to me one night in a jail cell, and I was under extreme pressure because JR was 2 cells away from me, and I'm getting messages from the guards, do the right thing, kid, keep your mouth shut. I'm thinking, man, I might have an accident in this place. I might slip in the shower or fall down. Stuff happens, Ron, let me tell you. After they had offered me the Federal Witness Protection Program, I came out of there screaming that I am not talking to you guys. I have nothing to say to you guys, just so JR could hear me down the hallway. And they threw me back in my jail cell, or they pulled me out again, and they pulled me into a different room, and there's 2 more men sitting there, and I start going off. They said, Tim, we're not from any police organization. We're friends of your sister Marge. and we just want to talk to you. He talked to me for about 15 minutes. He said, okay, time's up. And this man grabbed my hand, Ron, and he said, Tim, I just want to pray with you before you go back in that cell. And I prayed with him. And that night I was laying in my cell, and somebody had drawn the face of Jesus in colored pencil on the ceiling right above my face. And at that moment, I challenged God. I said, God, if you are real, I have got to know right now, or I will serve the devil the rest of my life. I was in eyes wide shut, questioned for 6 days, and it was like a dagger in my heart, the pressure I was under. And all of a sudden, a voice came in my head and said, wow, you should pray about this. And I said, I haven't prayed since I was 12 years old. I ain't going to do it now. And it was like another voice went off in my head, Ron, and said, Satan don't want you to pray right now. And I was just so defiant in my life at that point. I got up on my knees and prayed. Not long, maybe 30 seconds. I said, God, if you are real, I have got to know right now. I laid my head back down on the pillow, Ron, and it was like somebody ripped that dagger out of my chest. The pain came flowing out of my body to the point I was hyperventilating. I couldn't catch my breath and fell almost instantly asleep after not sleeping for 6 days, and had to get up and answer the count at the bars at 6 a.m. and the guard comes clipping off, and he stops in front of my bars and he looks at me. He goes, there's something different about you. Bars crack open. A guy comes walking in my cell. He looks at me. He goes, wow, you look different today. Don't think anything about it. I walk out of my cell. I walk 5, 6 cells down the galley, and a third man comes walking up to me and says, you look good today. Well, Ron, guys just don't tell you to look good every day in there. You don't want them to. But there was no denying in my life that Jesus Christ was real. He had made a physical countenance change in me, and I wish I could have said I got out and lived my life for the Lord, and for a while I did, but I have fallen back and backslidden and come back to him many times, and he's always been there with open arms.
This would make a marvelous screenplay, and I'm sure that you have been confronted with that option because it's the type of movie that is redemption. Any of the people that threatened you, because I know you were on suicide watch for a while, are they still with us, or they've gone to the big beyond?
Ron, the reason I finally wrote the book is everyone I was ever worried about is dead. There's really only 3 people in the book that I am concerned about their well-being because I always loved them. And I actually changed their last name in the book because those are the only 3 people that I worry about today.
The book is called A One-Man Crime Spree, of which our guest, Tim Murphy, penned a book about a life filled with crime up till a certain point. And in the last 35 years, he turned his life around, a very successful and talented individual that works in the corporate world. Tim, great to have you here. Let me ask you a quick question before we leave. You wrote a nice thing here about me on the front of the book. Did you listen to my radio show when I was a disc jockey back in Erie?
I did. I wanted to tell you, you were the legend, man. You were the Ronnie G, you know, with transistor radios on the handlebars of our bicycles.
Going way back then. Thanks for remembering, and good luck with the book. And by the way, you can get it on Amazon, all the sites where you can get books, right, Tim?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ron, and your beautiful wife, Claudia.
And there's more to come. You're listening to Ron Seggi Today.